Welcome to another edition of Ask Andrew, where I answer a film-related question submitted by a member of the BMFI community. Today's question: what do you think about Netflix owning movie theaters? Well, I'm of two minds on this question. For the short term, I am in favor of Netflix owning movie theaters, but I am not a fan of them owning movie theaters in terms of the long-term prospects for uh, motion pictures, and particularly for the types of movies I enjoy seeing. And I'll explain why. To start, I should say that currently Netflix owns two movie theaters. They are both historic and storied venues: the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood and the Paris Theater in New York City. And that is currently the extent of their theater holdings. When the pandemic was really at its worst for businesses last year, and a number of the larger theater chains were facing financial turmoil and needing infusions of cash, etc., there was talk about whether Netflix or Amazon, another company that has a streaming service that creates original motion pictures for it, might be interested in owning one of those theater chains. And their answer was decidedly no. But for them to have these two theaters makes sense for them, both in the near and long term. But I think the sort of outlook for moviegoers varies over how long a sort of perspective you look at this question. So for the near term, this definitely makes sense for Netflix. They needed to have venues in New York and Los Angeles for their motion pictures to have theatrical runs in, so they would be eligible for Academy Awards. Now, they were achieving this before they owned the theaters by, setting up deals to have their films show at theaters in those cities. But now that process will be a lot easier for them. It'll be a lot more streamlined for them. And though the Academy rules have changed, at least for this year, making films be able to have more eligibility for Oscars beyond the week-long theatrical run in New York and or LA during the calendar year. No one's sure if that's going to stay, or how those rules might change moving forward. So Netflix having the theaters for them for awards consideration at the very least makes sense. It also makes sense because they are working with a lot of different filmmakers, some of whom have historically been extremely committed to the theatrical movie-going experience, namely Martin Scorsese. And having these venues allows them to always, in every case, be able to show the work by Martin Scorsese or a David Fincher or whomever they might be in business with or choose to go into business with. Their work can always be shown in a theater, really just at Netflix's say-so, regardless of whatever financial arrangements they could or couldn't reach with any other theater owner or operator. So that's good. I think it will mean that more filmmakers who work for a company like Netflix will think of the theatrical movie-going experience to an extent, because Netflix is thinking of it at least a little bit. And I am someone who is always in favor of seeing movies that were intended to be seen in a theater, and even maybe some things that weren't seen in a theater very often, though not always, are presented better in theaters. And in a sense, that's why I'm also not very thrilled about the long-term results of Netflix owning movie theaters, because that they do, and should they increase their stake and have more theaters in more cities, it just makes it easier for them to hire and keep under contract talent like Scorsese, like David Fincher, like even someone like Michael Bay, whose movies I have always enjoyed seeing in the movie theater, and I have enjoyed seeing in the movie theater basically of my choice under the circumstances and schedule that I prefer. It makes it less likely that that's going to happen. Um, and that is something I am not a fan of. And I was always, when I heard that Scorsese was going to make a movie for Netflix, and even that Fincher had signed his huge deal for Netflix, not just for television show like Mindhunter, but for features, I always sort of thought, well, that won't last long because they'll want their movies to be seen in theaters and be seen by a lot of people in theaters. But the longer these deals happen and the longer these filmmakers seem to be content working with Netflix, and frankly, the longer Netflix owns movie theaters, or if they should get more of them, the more theaters they get, the more nervous I am that someone like David Fincher, whose movies I greatly enjoy, is going to ever return to working within the more traditional Hollywood industry ecosystem, where the wide theatrical release is the not just the gold standard, but the most common form of distribution and exhibition for movies. So that's why in the long term I'm not very thrilled about it. I see the pluses. I'm glad for the venues. I'm glad it helps the venues stay in business and stay vibrant and relevant. I'm glad that it means that those movies will definitely be able to be seen in theaters by people who want to see them in theaters. But in terms of what it suggests to me about the long-term prospects of people like Scorsese and Fincher and many others continuing to work for the streamer, that part I'm not thrilled with. So, of two minds, like I said. If you have a film-related question you would like me to try and answer, please visit the Ask Andrew section within Film Studies Online at brynmarfilm.org. Who knows? Next time I could be answering your question.